Welcome to the Center for Languages and Intercultural Communication at Rice University.
So first of all, what is my objective? So my goal is to incorporate interactional competence to my class, Spanish 321 and 323, that has a focus on the medical professions. What is interactional competence? I took a definition from the article we read from Baraja Rowan. Interactional competence is the ability to engage in various interactional events and to co-construct talk with various participants and display pragmatic knowledge. It is also the ability to jointly manage the turn-taking system with co-participants adopting appropriate interactional roles. It entails showing engagement and empathy when relevant or intended, as well as accomplishing social actions befitting the interactional context and social institutional goals. So this is related to research, and how do I relate this to my students? My goal is also to cater to my students' needs. So why should I incorporate this to my class? Well, in my case, it has proved to fulfill my students' needs, because interactional competence happens in spoken interactions, and that is exactly one of the things that my students are going to need. Not the only one, but it's one of them. And I wanted to make sure that I was including this one in my course. I'm going to show you how I realized that I was missing this part in my medical class that I started in the fall. At the beginning of the semester, I gave my students a survey that I call Analysis of Needs. So it has a lot of items they have to grade from 0 to 3 on how much they are going to use this in the future. It gave me an idea of general tendencies in my class for my students. So my students won't need to communicate with colleague doctors and medical staff in Spanish, because they will be working here most of the time and they will communicate in English. So they won't need the more specialized language that doctors and medical staff communicate with. And they won't use their Spanish in academic contexts and scientific conventions. These are my answers for my students. So they won't need so much the monologue speaking. In the case of my students, what they will need is the following. Almost all the cases, and this was very interesting for me to see that they will need mostly to speak and understand patients. This means that they will need to develop interaction, because that's how doctor-patient conversation happen. One of the challenges I encountered is that the textbooks that we have in Spanish for medical purposes don't include this part, and they have some challenges, which are the following. I'm bringing you examples. It's in Spanish, but here are descriptions of what they have to do. So here, students, they will have to look at these blood test results and come up with a diagnosis. My students don't know how to do that because they are not doctors yet. The audience for this book are professionals who are already doctors, and they just have to translate this to Spanish, their skills. So this didn't work for my students. Then I noticed that many of the samples were in fact not only not authentic, but also not realistic. This is supposed to be a doctor-patient consultation, and it has been written with a grammatical purpose to use a specific kind of verbs that don't appear so often in a normal conversation. I've done an activity comparing this dialogue with an authentic one, and my students noticed, they said, this patient sounds like a robot, because the doctor says, okay, you have pain, I'm going to give you something for the pain for now, and the patient says, thank you, doctor. The patient says more than that. The patient asks questions, and the patient sometimes doesn't agree, etc. Another challenge was register. I noticed that many of the texts from this book was actually written in too formal register. It was written language. Even me, I wouldn't use them in a normal conversation. And so what I wanted to do is to incorporate what these textbooks were missing, okay, to add something that they were missing, which was this interactional competence. How am I doing that? Well, by using natural samples made for a pedagogical purpose at one of the clinics in Houston. Then what I did was to create lesson plans to raise awareness through guided language analysis. Then I want to give my students structured opportunities to practice what they have analyzed and become aware of in the lesson plans. The reflection and self-assessment help them reflect on that I've been doing some activities, and formal assessment. So I would like to show you what I have done up to today, so week 8. I have done some preparation work. I've listened to the recordings and selected and edited some parts. Then I had to review and edit the transcriptions. So I have created 6 lesson plans for 50-minute class. And I have created other shorter activities and reflection and homework activities. And remaining work, I would like to create at least 2 more lesson plans for 50 minutes and then have 2 more video recordings. So now I would like to show you some clips of my students of how this worked in the class and with my students. ¿Sí? ¿Más o menos? ¿Sí? Bueno, pues habéis escuchado los 2 diálogos. Quiero ahora que escribáis las impresiones. Este es el paso 2, ¿de acuerdo? Vamos a hacer una lluvia de ideas, ¿sí? Lluvia de ideas con las impresiones entre el diálogo A y el diálogo B, ¿sí? Os podéis fijar en el contenido o en la forma de hablar, ¿de acuerdo?
Vómitos o náuseas.
No, solo me caen mal ciertas comidas. ¿Qué debo hacer para sentirme mejor?
Debe descansar mucho.
So they are comparing this artificial dialogue and the natural. So they are noticing that artificial is more formal, sounds like they are trying to use too much vocabulary, while the real one is more informal, more natural. I didn't tell them anything about that. They came up with those were their perceptions when comparing both.
A era como un listo de síntomas,
Muy bien.
pero en diálogo B, como Samir dice, es más personal.
Ajá, más personal. Muy bien. Sí.
En el diálogo A es como las preguntas son como una entrevista al paciente, pero en el diálogo B ella preguntarle al paciente para le dar sus opiniones también.
Ajá. So the first student speaking was Melissa, and so she noted in class that authentic conversation was more personal, and that another student noticed that the doctor gave options of treatment. And then I had them do the homework activity, which is also on sample B, which was record a conversation, doctor-patient. And Melissa showed both things, making it more personal and giving options in her video. And here is her video. The sound is not great, but there are subtitles.
Sí, también tengo la tos. Sí, pues sí, yo creo que tienes un resfriado. Entonces tengo algunos medicamentos que puedo recomendar a ti. Pero
and I would like to review what I've showed you is that I've used in the class natural samples, authentic recordings, and used them in my lesson plans to create awareness through guided language analysis. And then I have given them opportunities to practice that are structured, like that homework activity. And so these are the things I have included to my Spanish 321 class, and I've done it for my 323 class also.